everyone, it's Kyung's Cakes and Crafts. So today we're going to do a little caking with some figurine making and some fondant decorations, but I'm going to bring in a little crafting with the backdrop so that I can make this really fun animation that I have in my head, and I hope it works out. It's really hot this week, hotter than it was in my last video, and as far as I'm concerned, 2020 and this heat wave can go hit the bricks. So I'm bringing in a little Christmas. I don't care if it's August, and this is what I'm going to make this week. Guess what's in the box? I'm not going to tell you to the end. You have to stick around and watch the animation. So I'm excited to get started, but before we get started, make sure you like this video and subscribe to my channel. It really helps a lot, and I really appreciate it. So I'm going to get to creating. So I have this little tool, and I'm going to use my Omni Grid here to just score some lines in the fondant to make the wood grain for the floorboards. So now I'm just measuring about every half an inch or so. And now I'm going to paint it with some Amerigel food color mixed with vodka to just give it more of a grain texture. You want to use a wide flat brush, and it's okay if it's a little streaky. It kind of adds to the interest of the wood grain, and also the paint seeps in the score lines you made to make them a little bit darker, which is nice. Okay, so while this is still a little wet, I think I'm gonna attach the walls to it and hopefully it'll stick. So line up the corners the best I can. Yeah, it seems to be sticking. I think it'll stick once it's dry, but even if it doesn't, I can just tape it from the back. Ta-da! When I use molds, I find it easiest to just dust a little cornstarch in with a brush so the fondant doesn't stick inside. Using my fingers, just go around and press the fondant into the mold. I know there's all different kinds of ways to do it, but this is just the easiest for me. And then squeeze off the excess like that. I like to press it all in really nice so it gets into all the little corners. Okay, so the tricky part usually I find that people have with molds is that they tend to stretch out the fondant when they're trying to release it from the mold. So a great thing to have is cool spray. Basically it's for chocolate and candy and things like that. You just sort of hit it and it freezes the fondant for just a second, enough to pop it out of the mold without distorting the shape. Go. This is just some Ideal Gold decorating paint. I have like a forest green. I'm just going to use it to add some shadow to my wreath. So I'm just gonna make the bowl of ice cream. I'm gonna make his base, so I'm gonna carve down the shape of his bowl, and then just roll it, squash him down. Okay, let's cover him. I'm just putting some vegetable shortening on the outside, just to give the fondant a little something to stick to. All right. Flip it over. The edge of his ice cream is going to go over the bowl a little bit, so I'm not really concerned with getting this edge that clean. So I'm just going to pull it up, wet the fondant so that I can tuck it onto the top and thin it out. And I'm just pushing the fondant down to get it to meet flatter at the bottom. Smooth him out, just using the fondant as a buffer. That looks good. So I'm going to set him aside, and I want him to have a foot on the bottom of his bowl, which is just going to be a circle. Alright, so sadly I made my cupcake too big the first time around, so I have to redo him and he's gotta go. Okay, so I'm going to build the sides of my gift box. So I want them to have a uniform thickness. So I'm going to use this pasta roller here. So I have it set to the thickest size, which is a 0. You have to roll your fondant out a little bit so that it'll fit. So I just want to clean up. So I'm gonna use my straight razor, one of my favorite tools. I'm going to go bake these pieces. They've been mixed with Tylose. All right, so it's coming to my kitchen because I'm just gonna bake these little pieces in the oven at like 150 degrees for about 5 to 8 minutes. Because the Tylose is mixed in, it has a reaction and it causes the fondant to dry really fast. So once they are back down to room temperature, they'll be more rigid and you'll be able to assemble your gift box right away. Okay, so now I'm gonna assemble the little gift box. I wanted it to be like this so that when you're looking at the front of the box, you don't see a seam and the seam would be on the side. So then I had to trim this bottom piece. So now let's go ahead and assemble. And I'm just gonna take some chocolate and smear it along the bottom and center that. Before I freeze spray it, I'm just gonna clean up the chocolate on the outside a little bit. And then you have the last side. And there is a little overhang on one of the sides, but I can just cut that off. It's hard, but it's not like rock hard to where you can't make any adjustments. If you have any chocolate, you can just scrape it off with a blade. So if you're a real stickler about any of the little gaps showing on the side, you could always come back with a little bit of royal icing and a color to match, or use some of your fondant and you can put in a bowl with a little bit of water and it will melt down into a liquid that you could then spackle the inside of the crease with. To make the lid, I've got a piece of fondant rolled out that's about the thickness of what I want the lid to be, and I'm just going to turn my box over, press down a bit. I don't know if you can see that it made an indentation. The lid is going to stick out a little bit over the top, so I'm going to cut just outside that line. And And what's really great about doing it that way is even if your box isn't perfectly square, you'll get it the right shape because you followed the contours of the box that you made. I'm gonna paint some stripes. If you make a little mistake, it's not a big deal because you can always come in with a Q-tip dipped in vodka and wipe some of the color off. I hear a lot of people struggling with painting lines, and I think that the main thing that they might not be doing right is using short little brushes. I think people feel like they have more control using a short brush, but actually this is a watercolor liner brush, and it makes it so much easier to paint lines and calligraphy because it's so thin, and also because it's so long, it holds a lot of the watercolor pigment in it, so you don't have to keep dipping. Also, the long line just makes it easier to keep a smooth flow, and the paint just flows out of your brush. So when you have a short stubby brush, it doesn't do that, and you have to keep dipping with each line, and then your line tends to get fatter. So I would say get a watercolor liner brush. It's one of my favorite tools. Another thing for painting straight lines is when you're painting a line, you have to start, and then as you drag your brush, you have to look at where you want to end up. You're not looking at where you are. So if I'm trying to make a diagonal, I put my brush down and I just drag, but I'm not looking right at the tip of my brush where my brush is hitting the fondant. I'm looking at where I sort of want to end up. My eyes are always ahead of where my hand is. It's like riding a bike. Like wherever you're looking, that's where you're going to turn. It's the same thing. So wherever you're looking, that's kind of where your brush is going to end up. Otherwise, you're going to be like, whoa, and you're going to be going all wiggly. Also, I'm not dragging with my wrist. My wrist is staying stationary, and I'm just moving outward. I mean, and we're human, so it's not going to be perfect, and I kind of like things that way. I like to look at things and know they were made by human hands and not a machine, but you don't want it to get too wiggly, too thick, and also you don't want to do short, sketchy lines either. You want to keep it fluid. So I realized I don't want this ribbon going around this part. I swear, this heat is frying my brain. That's okay, you guys can just see my mess-ups. Anyway, I hope you liked that. Super fun to make. If you have any questions about anything that I did during this video, go ahead and leave them in the comments, but I hope you enjoyed it. Should I be demanding my figgy pudding? It's too soon. It's August. Someone make me some figgy pudding. Have you ever tried figgy pudding? Anyway, see you next time.